Throughout this course, you've spent a lot of time getting to know MongoDB, and by extension of that, NoSQL databases in general. And if you've worked with an SQL database in the past, you might be wondering, when should I be using a SQL database, and when should I be using a NoSQL database? So we're going to talk a little bit about that in this video. When I started to look into this topic, I was under the impression that SQL databases and NoSQL databases were pretty much direct competitors. They both did the same thing, and that there were going to be two different schools of thought, one saying that SQL was better, and the other saying that NoSQL was better. But this isn't exactly what I found. For the most part, the truth is that they're actually very different tools that are designed to do very different things. NoSQL databases really shine at working with huge amounts of data, and by huge, I mean like the amounts of data that Google or Facebook have to work with. NoSQL databases often are also especially made for running on large clusters of many different servers, while still being able to do things like have a field be unique in all the documents across those many servers. Again, this is something that technology giants like Google or Facebook need. In fact, in most cases, it's big companies like this that are often the main thrust behind new NoSQL technologies, because the SQL options for them just aren't doing what they need them to do. But I'm guessing that most of you aren't in a position like this. I know I'm certainly not. We're independent developers or working on a small team or relatively small companies, at least compared to Google. We may have large applications with a lot of users, but we're nowhere near the amount of data that Google or Facebook have to work with. So I think for smaller companies and independent development teams, that kind of thing, it's really more a matter of taste than technology. Throughout this course, you've gotten a good look at a lot of the primary features of a NoSQL database. Things like documents that don't have a specific schema, or having parts of your database being denormalized, or not using SQL to query your database, or just in general using a very unopinionated database system. These are the kind of things you need to think about, as well as the other NoSQL database features, when you're choosing a database for your project. I read a really good analogy in one of the articles that I've linked to below this video. It compared SQL databases to vehicles with automatic transmission, and NoSQL databases to a vehicle with manual transmission. They both have the same general purpose, but NoSQL offers a lot more control over the fine details of the system. The analogy went on to say that if you're just sitting in traffic most of the time, manual transmission won't really be that useful to you, but you can still use it. It's the same thing with NoSQL. You might not need all of the features that are made for giant amounts of data, but you can still use a NoSQL database in smaller projects. Personally, I like the ideas behind NoSQL databases in general, and I like a lot of the specific features of MongoDB. For example, I like being able to work with my database directly in JavaScript, especially when I'm writing an application in node.js. It just works out much better to have one language for both your logic and your data. This idea is what's behind an object relational mapper in something like Active Record for Ruby on Rails. You're always going to be writing Ruby no matter what the database is underneath the cover, except with MongoDB, you're actually working with the database itself and not a wrapper around it, which gives you a whole lot more control. So those are a couple of thoughts on the differences between SQL databases and NoSQL databases. Underneath this video, you're going to find links to several of the articles on this topic that I've found helpful when researching this. So if you're interested, check those out.